The fluorescent lights of the bank lobby hummed overhead, casting everything in that sickly corporate glow that makes everyone look half dead. I sat in one of those uncomfortable waiting chairs, the kind designed to make you feel like you're in trouble even when you're not. My phone buzzed for the 14th time that morning. Another Instagram notification. Another post from my sister's Dubai vacation. Another photo of champagne and infinity pools and designer shopping bags. Another reminder that my family was living it up on the other side of the world while I was here. I didn't open Instagram. I already knew what I'd see. Madison's perfectly curated feed, documenting every luxurious moment of the family trip of a lifetime that I wasn't invited to. My parents smiling in front of the Burj Khalifa. My sister posing with more shopping bags than any human could possibly need. The hashtags would be something like number blessed number family time, number living our best life. The irony would have been funny if my hands weren't shaking. The bank manager called my name. "Miss Chen, we can see you now." I followed him into a small office that smelled like coffee and anxiety. He pulled up my account on his computer, and I watched his expression change from professional politeness to genuine concern. "I'm sorry to confirm this," he said, adjusting his glasses. "But yes, there have been significant withdrawals from your trust account over the past 3 weeks. We flagged them immediately, but the authorization appeared legitimate at the time." "How much?" He hesitated. $300,000. The room tilted slightly. I'd known it was bad, the automatic alerts had told me that much, but hearing the number out loud made it real in a way that emails and notifications couldn't. "The account was opened by someone claiming to be you," he continued, pulling up documents. "They had your social security number, your mother's maiden name, all the required information. They claimed it was a joint trust account for estate planning purposes. It wasn't me." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I never authorized any joint account. That trust fund was left to me by my uncle when he passed away last year. $500,000. In my name only. 3 weeks ago, everything had seemed fine. Well, fine by my family standards, which admittedly wasn't saying much. I'd been working late at the accounting firm where I'd landed a position right out of college, reviewing spreadsheets for a client audit, when my phone rang. My mother. I almost didn't answer. Our conversations rarely went well, but something made me pick up. "Sophia," she'd said, her voice dripping with that particular brand of sweetness she only used when she wanted something. "We need to talk about Uncle James's money." Uncle James, my father's brother, the only person in my entire family who'd ever treated me like I mattered. He'd raised me after my parents decided that one child was enough, specifically Madison, who'd been born when I was 5. They'd shipped me off to Uncle James, claiming they couldn't handle 2 kids but somehow managed just fine with one, the golden child, the favorite. "There's nothing to talk about," I'd said. "The trust fund is mine." Uncle James was very clear about that in his will. "But we're family," my mother had protested. "Family shares. You can't possibly need all that money. You're young, you have a good job. Your father and I are getting older. And Madison is trying to start her life. Madison is 25 years old with a communications degree. She's never used and no job. That's not my problem. How can you be so selfish?" The sweetness vanished instantly. "After everything we've done for you?" I'd laughed at that. Actually laughed. "What exactly have you done for me? You gave me to Uncle James when I was 5 because I was too much work. I didn't hear from you for years. The only time you called was when you needed money. And Uncle James always said no on my behalf. Now that he's gone, you think you can just..." She'd hung up. I'd stared at my phone, hands trembling with old anger and new frustration, then went back to my spreadsheets. Numbers made sense. Numbers didn't lie or manipulate or abandon you when you became inconvenient. That had been 3 weeks ago, the last normal conversation I'd had with them before everything went to hell. The bank manager was still talking, pulling up transaction records. The withdrawals started small. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Then larger amounts. The final withdrawal was $150,000, moved to a cryptocurrency investment account. Cryptocurrency? My accountant brain immediately started screaming red flags. "Which platform?" He showed me the transfer details. I didn't recognize the company name, which meant nothing good. The crypto space was full of legitimate platforms, but it was also a breeding ground for scams, especially ones targeting people who didn't understand the technology. I need copies of everything, I said. Every document, every authorization form, every piece of paperwork that was filed to open that account. Of course, I'll have them ready for you within the hour. He paused. Miss Chen, I have to ask, do you know who might have had access to your personal information? I thought about the file cabinet in my parents' house, the one in the basement where they kept old tax returns and birth certificates and social security cards. I'd seen it once, years ago, when I'd gone back to grab some of my childhood belongings that Uncle James thought I might want. Madison had been there, helping our mother organize family documents. Yeah, I said quietly. I know exactly who had access. The documents the bank manager gave me confirmed what I already suspected. The signature on the joint account application wasn't mine, it was close. Someone had practiced. But the loops were wrong, the pressure too light. The handwriting on the authorization forms looked like Madison's. I'd seen her signature enough times on birthday cards and Christmas presents that only appeared when our parents remembered I existed. I drove home to my apartment, a modest one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood that I could comfortably afford on my salary. Not luxury, but mine. Actually mine. I'd furnished it with IKEA and thrift store finds, decorated it with plants from the farmer's market, made it a space that felt safe. The opposite of the pristine, cold house I'd grown up in, where everything was for show and nothing was real. I opened my laptop and finally, reluctantly, checked Instagram. Madison's feed was exactly what I expected. 3 weeks of luxury content, each post more extravagant than the last. The Burj Al Arab Hotel, private beach clubs, designer boutiques, yacht tours, Michelin-starred restaurants. Every single post geotagged in Dubai, every single photo showing my parents and my sister living like celebrities. The comments were full of their friends gushing about how amazing it all looked, asking about trip details, saying they were so jealous. Madison had responded to every comment with variations of living our best life, and so grateful for family. The most recent post, from yesterday, showed Madison holding up shopping bags from Chanel, Hermes, and Louis Vuitton. The caption read, "Last day in paradise. Can't wait to come home and show everyone our treasures. Number Dubai shopping. Number treat yourself. Number family goals." I checked the posting dates against my bank statements. Every major withdrawal corresponded to a new wave of posts. The pattern was so obvious it was almost insulting. They'd used my money to fund their dream vacation, documented every moment of it on social media, and hadn't even tried to hide it. I took screenshots of everything. Every post, every caption, every comment, every geotagged location. Then, I opened a new folder on my laptop and labeled it Evidence. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Miss Chen? This is Detective Sarah Morrison with the Financial Crimes Unit. Your bank filed a fraud alert on your account. Do you have a few minutes to talk? I had more than a few minutes. I had 3 weeks of anger and a lifetime of being treated like I didn't matter, and I was finally ready to use it. Detective Morrison asked me to come to the station to file a formal report. I went that afternoon, bringing every document the bank had given me, every screenshot from Instagram, and a timeline I'd created in Excel because that's what accountants do when they're furious. They organize their rage into spreadsheets. This is very thorough, Detective Morrison said, reviewing my documentation. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that made me feel like I was finally being taken seriously. You work in accounting? Big Four firm. I audit financial statements for a living. I know how to track money. She smiled grimly. That's going to make my job a lot easier. Walk me through this timeline. I did. I explained how Uncle James had established the trust fund 2 years before he died, explicitly naming me as the sole beneficiary. How he'd made sure it was protected, managed by his lawyer until I turned 25, then transferred completely to my control on my birthday 6 months ago. How my family had immediately started calling, demanding their fair share of money that had nothing to do with them. They got worse after I said no, I continued. My mother called every week. Sometimes my father would call too, saying I was tearing the family apart over money. Madison sent me texts saying I was selfish, that I was betraying them. Then, about a month ago, it all stopped. I thought maybe they'd finally given up. They hadn't given up, Detective Morrison said. They'd just changed tactics. She pulled up the cryptocurrency platform that my money had been transferred to. With a few quick searches, she found what she was looking for, and her expression darkened. "This is a known scam operation," she said. "We've had multiple complaints about this platform. They promise high returns on crypto investments, collect money from victims, then the whole thing disappears. The people running it are usually based overseas, which makes prosecution difficult. How much have they stolen? From this particular operation? About $4 million from various victims over the past 6 months." She looked up at me. "Miss Chen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you think your family knew this was a scam?" I thought about my father's friend, Richard. He'd been around for years, always bragging about his latest investment scheme, always losing money, always finding new ways to convince people to trust him with their cash. He'd tried to get Uncle James to invest in some can't-miss opportunity about a year before Uncle James died. Uncle James had laughed in his face and told him to leave. "My father has a friend named Richard Cole," I said slowly. "He's always involved in some investment scheme, always promising huge returns. Uncle James called him a con artist." Detective Morrison's expression shifted. "Richard Cole, mid-50s, lives in Scottsdale? That's him?" She pulled up something on her computer, turned the screen toward me. It was a photo of Richard, along with several other men I didn't recognize. "These are the people we believe are running this cryptocurrency scam. We've been building a case against them for months. If your father was friends with Richard Cole and directed your family's stolen funds to this platform, that's not just identity theft. That's wire fraud. That's conspiracy." The room felt cold suddenly. What kind of prison time are we talking about? Federal wire fraud? If convicted, 5 to 20 years per count, depending on the amount and whether they can prove intent. If this was coordinated between your father and Richard Cole, they'll both be facing multiple counts. And my sister? My mother? Identity theft, unauthorized access to financial accounts, potentially conspiracy if we can prove they knew it was illegal. Your sister is the one who actually committed the identity theft, so she's looking at serious charges. Your mother, depending on her level of involvement, could be charged as an accessory. I should have felt something. Guilt, maybe. Hesitation. These were my family. But all I felt was a cold, calm certainty. They'd made their choices. They'd stolen from me, lied about it, spent my money on luxury vacations while posting about it on social media like they'd earned it. They'd thought I was too weak, too loyal, too desperate for their approval to fight back. They'd thought wrong. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Everything you have. And I need you to not contact them. Can you do that?" I nodded. "They're coming back from Dubai tomorrow." I checked their flight details. They posted them on Facebook, which seems unwise for people committing federal crimes. But I'm not complaining. Detective Morrison smiled. "No, let them keep posting. Every piece of social media evidence makes our case stronger. They're documenting their own crimes." I went home and did what I do best. I organized. I created a master spreadsheet showing every withdrawal, every Instagram post, every Facebook update, every transaction. I pulled Uncle James's will and trust documents. I gathered screenshots of every text message my family had sent me asking for money, every voicemail my mother had left. I built an evidence file so comprehensive that even my most demanding audit client would be impressed. And then, I waited. My phone buzzed the next evening. A text from Madison. "Home tomorrow. Can't wait to show you what we got you." I didn't respond. I'd filed the police report 3 days ago. By now, Detective Morrison had told me, the FBI had been brought in because of the cryptocurrency fraud and the interstate nature of the crimes. They'd spent the last 3 days gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, coordinating with federal prosecutors. They were ready. I was ready. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I'd never called in sick before. My manager sounded genuinely concerned and told me to take whatever time I needed. I drove to my parents' house, the place I'd lived until I was 5, and then visited only on obligatory holidays until Uncle James died. I parked down the street, far enough away that they wouldn't see my car. Detective Morrison had asked me to be there. "You don't have to," she'd said, "but I think you might want to see this." She was right. I did want to see it. At 10 a.m., 3 black SUVs pulled up to my parents' house. FBI agents emerged, along with local police and Detective Morrison. They walked up to the door with purpose, with authority, with all the power my family thought they had, but never actually did. My father answered the door. I was too far away to hear what was said, but I saw his face change from confusion to fear to anger. He tried to close the door. An agent stopped him, showed him a warrant. More agents went inside. I watched as they brought out boxes of documents. I watched as Madison came to the door in her pajamas, saw the agents, and started crying. I watched as my mother tried to argue with Detective Morrison, her arms waving dramatically like they always did when she didn't get her way. Then I watched as they brought out my father in handcuffs. Richard Cole, it turned out, had already been arrested earlier that morning, and he'd immediately started talking, offering up my father's name in exchange for a plea deal. The FBI had been watching Richard for months. My case had just given them the final piece they needed. Madison was handcuffed too. Identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy. My mother wasn't arrested, but Detective Morrison told me later that charges were pending. They were still determining her level of involvement. I sat in my car and watched my family's perfect life collapse. I didn't feel joy, exactly. I didn't feel sadness either. I felt free, like a weight I'd been carrying for 28 years had finally been lifted. My phone rang. Detective Morrison, they're asking to speak with you, she said. Your mother especially. She's saying this is all a misunderstanding, that you can clear it up if you just talk to them. You don't have to, of course. I don't want to, I said. I have nothing to say to them. Understood. For what it's worth, we recovered about $150,000 from various accounts before they could spend it all. The rest is going to be harder to recover. Some was lost in the crypto scam, some was spent on the trip, but we'll do our best. $150,000. Not the full amount, but more than I'd expected. The rest was gone, spent on luxury hotels and designer bags and champagne wishes. They'd burned through $150,000 in 3 weeks, like it was nothing, like it was their right. I drove home. I sat on my couch, surrounded by my thrift store furniture and farmers market plants, and I let myself breathe. Over the next few weeks, the case developed. Richard Cole's cryptocurrency platform was indeed a scam, and federal prosecutors were building a massive case involving multiple victims and millions of dollars. My father, as Richard's partner and active participant in directing victims to the platform, was facing wire fraud charges, conspiracy to commit fraud, and money laundering. The prosecutor told me he was looking at 10 to 15 years, if convicted. Madison's charges were serious too. Identity theft, unauthorized access to financial accounts, wire fraud. Her lawyer tried to argue that she'd been manipulated by our parents, that she didn't understand what she was doing was illegal. But the evidence was overwhelming. She'd forged my signature, used my personal information, opened accounts in my name. The text messages she'd sent me afterward, bragging about the trip and asking when I'd stop being selfish and share, didn't help her case. My mother eventually was charged as an accessory. She'd known about the plan, had helped gather my personal information, had gone on the trip knowing exactly where the money came from. Her lawyer was pushing for a plea deal. None of them tried to contact me directly. Their lawyers sent letters asking me to provide character references, to testify on their behalf, to remember that we're family. I sent each letter back unopened. My lawyer, Uncle James's lawyer, actually, who'd been managing the trust and was absolutely furious about what had happened, sent them a very clear message. I would not be helping them. I would not be providing references. I would, however, be pursuing civil charges to recover the lost funds. The trial took 8 months. I didn't attend. I'd given my deposition, provided my evidence, and let the prosecutors do their work. I focused on my job, on my life, on building something real and good without them. The cryptocurrency scheme fell apart spectacularly. Richard Cole was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. My father, who'd been Richard's active partner in the scheme, received 12 years. Madison's trial was separate. She took a plea deal, admitting to identity theft and fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence. She got 5 years, with the possibility of parole after 3. My mother's plea deal was probation, restitution, and community service. She'd cooperated with prosecutors, provided evidence against my father and Richard, and the judge took into account that she'd been somewhat manipulated. But she was still guilty. She'd still participated. Through the civil case, I recovered an additional $50,000 from the sale of the designer bags Madison had bought, from my parents' bank accounts, from assets they were forced to liquidate. It wasn't everything, but it was something. The insurance company that had bonded the trust eventually paid out a settlement too. Between everything, I recovered about $300,000 of the original $500,000. The rest was gone, spent on a 3-week fantasy that had cost my family everything. A year after it all began, I sat in the office of Uncle James's lawyer, signing the final paperwork to close out the civil case. "Your uncle would be proud of you," he said. "He always said you had a spine of steel. Looks like he was right. He taught me to stand up for myself," I said. "He taught me that being family doesn't mean accepting abuse." "What are you going to do now?" I'd been thinking about that. I'd been saving money, working hard, building my career. I'd gotten a promotion at work, senior accountant, managing my own clients. I'd been looking at starting my own practice, helping small businesses with their accounting and taxes. I had the skills, the knowledge, and now, the capital to make it happen. "I'm going to build something," I said. "Something that's actually mine. Something good." I left his office and drove through the city, past the neighborhood where my parents used to live before they lost the house to asset forfeiture, past the expensive restaurants they used to pretend they could afford, past all the markers of the life they'd tried to maintain on other people's money. I drove to my apartment, my real home, the one I'd built with my own work, and I started making plans. 6 months later, I opened Chen Financial Services. Small practice, just me and 2 employees I'd hired from my old firm. We focused on small businesses, individuals who needed honest accounting help, people who'd been taken advantage of by scammers and needed someone to help them rebuild. I used everything I'd learned from my own case to help others track down fraud, recover funds, protect themselves. It wasn't luxury. I didn't have infinity pools or designer bags or champagne wishes. I had something better. I had work I believed in, clients who respected me, a life I'd built without owing anyone anything. My parents are still in prison. Madison gets out next year. My mother sends letters occasionally, trying to rebuild a relationship, asking to meet. I don't respond. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. I think about Uncle James sometimes. He'd left me that money, hoping it would give me freedom, help me build a life. And it did, just not in the way anyone expected. My family had tried to steal my future, but instead, they'd given me clarity. They'd shown me exactly who they were, removed any doubt, burned every bridge so thoroughly that I couldn't cross back even if I wanted to. And I didn't want to. I keep one photo on my desk, Uncle James and me at my college graduation. He's smiling, proud, his hand on my shoulder. That's family. That's what matters. Not blood, not obligation, but choice, love, respect. The rest? The people who tried to steal from me, who thought I'd be too afraid or too desperate for their approval to fight back. They learned better. And I learned that the best revenge isn't just justice, it's building a life so good, so real, so completely yours that their absence is a blessing, not a loss.